And we're going to pick up with item K. We don't have any further public comment, so we'll go ahead and pass that. We'll go to board reports. I wanted just to address real quickly this memo that I referenced earlier. I'm not going to sit here and just read verbatim the whole thing, but I do want to discuss a couple of the items just for the folks that are in attendance that may be curious. So essentially what we did with CareerSource Brevard, and just for clerk's benefit, this will be L as in Lima 4. I'll just call this my board report. We had funded them with $750,000 with the idea that they would help either folks that lost their jobs on account of coronavirus and or businesses that were forced to reduce staff or lay off staff on account of coronavirus. The real goal, if we could match up both of those boxes and kill two birds with one stone, that would be wonderful. But as long as they checked one box or the other, I think that was certainly what I was going for. I've been keeping decent tabs with CareerSource just to get a good idea in terms of where they're at with that, to see how it's going and whether they are expending everything that we've allocated, which at least was my understanding that was likely to be done at the time that we approved it. They have received about 160 applicants, and we do have both Judy Blanchard and Tom LaFleur from CareerSource, and they can come up at their pleasure. But they received about 160 applications, to my understanding, throughout the county. To fully fund one employee for all of the businesses that applied, they would need another $1.5 million over and above the $750 that we initially allocated. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about all minimum wage jobs by any means. We're talking about jobs that pay reasonable wages in many instances. The other amount that I think we need to discuss is for those businesses that requested 2 or more employees to fund 2 employees for those businesses over and above the one that we would otherwise potentially fund. It would be another $1 million to cover all of the businesses that applied to have a second or beyond that additional employee or employees. To give them another employee over and above the first would be $1 million. So we would be looking to fund everything that's being requested at another $2.5 million. Putting that on the back burner on hold for just a moment, I think we're kind of looking at this in a multifaceted way, and I'll let Mr. Abate take over in a minute here before we turn it over to CareerSource to let Judy and Tom say what they'd like. But the other avenue that we were pursuing with respect to businesses was doing this direct relief, the grants to businesses that were impacted by COVID. So we had allocated $10 million to accomplish that. We had limits of $10,000 per business. We had a slew of qualification requirements that we put in place. As of yesterday, the memo that I've sent out gives you the stats in terms of where we're at with that. The bottom line is we could fully fund everyone that qualifies that applied thus far and have plenty of money left over. So I know there were certain individuals that thought that $10 million wouldn't be enough. Given the requirements that we set out, it appears to be more than enough. So what my suggestion over and above doing what I suggested with respect to CareerSource and funding them with that additional $2.5 million, what I would suggest we do, and Mr. Abate may have a slightly different proposal, and I'd certainly consider it or ask you all to consider it as well, or instead, following the application deadline for that $10 million block that we set aside separate and apart from CareerSource for businesses to apply for grants or direct relief, that deadline is coming up on Monday, so Monday, August 10th. Anything we receive after that is past the deadline as it's now set. So we need to look to see what it is we want to do with that. My suggestion, and it's not by any means in stone, it's just a suggestion from having eyeballed this and looked at this, as I'm sure many, if not all of you have, is that after we're done with that, we allow for a second round of funding where we take additional applications, but I think we should relax the requirements or some of the requirements to a degree. I've had folks both in and out of my district reach out that have expressed some concern, some much more reasonable concern than others, where they either didn't qualify or had some issue that prohibited them from being able to get in during this round. My suggestion, given that we may relax the requirements, is to reduce the amount that we allow per business from 10 to 8,000, because we don't know how many businesses are going to apply. We can always increase it later. We could always expand it later. But I would have a second round fully funded at $10 million, just as we fully funded the first round. And the way that I would suggest we come up with that is we take anything left over from that first round of funding where we allocated $10 million, whatever that number is, whether it's 3 million, 7 million, whatever that number is. It may be 5 million, give or take. It's tough to say because we could have a slew of applications come in between now and close of business Monday. But we take that and we take whatever the difference between 10 million and that number that's left over from the first round of funding is, we take that out of the unallocated portion of the CARES Act. And we have that second round of funding available up to 10 million. And if we hit 10 million, wonderful. If we don't, we can also figure out what to do at that point. We keep it open for a similar amount of time or the same amount of time. The couple suggestions that I have as far as relaxing the standards for that second round, though, I did hear from folks, and if staff has a different or a better idea or an alternate idea, I'm open to it. We had specified, and I think, in fact, I may be the responsible guy for this, so I apologize if this impacted anyone, that they have to have a valid county business tax receipt. My understanding, and I've not had a business in an incorporated portion of a municipality. It's always been in an unincorporated Brevard. You have businesses, as I understand it now, that are in the municipalities that have tax receipts through those municipalities, and at least some of those businesses either didn't qualify or believed that they didn't qualify as a result of not having a county business tax receipt, even though they may have done everything appropriate and had a business tax receipt with the city. So my thought is we should relax it, so whether they have a county business tax receipt or a city business tax receipt, as long as they've got one or the other and it's valid, we treat them the same. Beyond that, I'm just taking a look here to make sure I don't miss anything. We would allow the same businesses that otherwise would have qualified for the first round to apply for the second. We don't let them double dip. The limit of 8,000 would apply for the second round regardless of whether they met the more stringent earlier requirements or not. As far as those folks that have received federal aid, which was another disqualifier, I don't want to see them double dip and beyond cover their actual quantifiable expenses that qualify for reimbursement. But if their federal aid didn't make them whole from the COVID attributable losses or expenses, I would like them to be able to get that difference up to the $8,000 cap if they otherwise qualify. I know that I talked with Mr. Abate, and there were at least some businesses, thankfully not too many to my understanding, that essentially wanted to get more between the federal program and county options than they lost. And that, to me, is not the purpose of the program. It's not to make someone more than whole. It's to get them as close to whole as we can make them without going over it. I think if we do it this way, we're going to help a lot more local businesses. We're going to help businesses that we didn't make available the options for in the first round, but we're doing it in a conservative enough way that we're not putting ourselves in a spot where we're very likely to run out of funding. So, my suggestion would be to support both of those. If we support either of them, it's better than nothing. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Abate, and then Commissioner Pritchett, please.
Once they come up, I'm going to feel bad not agreeing with them. So
Okay.
I like that. I agree with you. We probably need to get that going because we only have 5 months, and it's hard to get all these things done and out in that amount of time. And I also agree with maybe raising the amount some. And I'm using also a lot. We sat down, we looked at the ones that didn't go through, and you're correct. They were going to end up making like a $20,000 profit by the time they're done here. So that was a good call. I struggle with the Career Source, not with the Career Source. They're nice people. But we gave them a pot of money, and then they took a fee and turned it over to somebody else to run it. So we made a couple administrative fees, which makes me very uncomfortable. And let me tell you another thing. I looked at they dropped it to 11%, but on $250,000, you're talking about like $290,000. We're going to give administrative fees right off the top again. And here's my other concern. You put one employee into a business, and it's $14,000 for 3 months. We're giving them money to a business. Here's $14,000. Keep this person working for 3 months. And we ended up with the administrative fees. It's $29 an hour that we're handing over here some way, somehow. So I think a better strategy, if we're going to hand $14,000 to a business, instead, let's just give it to one of these small businesses and let them hire extra people. I mean, and so instead of giving them 10, give them 24 and let them hire 5 people. I think we'd get a better result. We're not doing the administrative fees, and we're getting the money into the community. I didn't vote for this last time, so nobody's going to be mad at me for not voting it for this time. But again, I'm real uncomfortable with handing it over, giving them a cut, and then they hand it off to get it done.
Sure.
And then I'm also really uncomfortable with the amount of money we're spending for one person, whereas we could probably get it out into these small businesses, higher amounts, and then they can just spend better.
Let me jump on that real quick since I don't see any other lights at the moment. Then I'll turn it over to staff and Career Source. In terms of an 11% admin fee, it's not that there's no value added by what they're doing. And I'll let them talk because they certainly can do a better job of explaining exactly what their involvement is with the process. But the fact is, we don't have expertise remotely comparable within the county umbrella to what they offer. And I don't know that it would be any cheaper for us to be able to do it in-house. One of the reasons that I really like doing this Career Source approach, and I'll take responsibility, good, bad, or indifferent. I approached Career Source and asked them about it. It wasn't the other way around. And they were great to work with, and they were quick to put things together. But the fact is, this to me is ideal because you're paying someone to work. You're not paying them to exist. You're paying them, you're putting them in a position where they're productive, they're contributing to the economy, and frankly, you're helping the business at the same time. So you're getting that I don't want to say public SPOGO, but the public SPOGO, don't sue us, by having both of those addressed. And frankly, if the business does well, in all likelihood, they're going to keep those people on. So I do agree that, if you look at $29 an hour, if that's what the numbers come out to be, and you're a CPA, I think your math is going to be better than my math.
It was fast math.
Well,
So.
all the same, I trust your math. I don't have any reason not to trust it. We got to keep in mind, it's not that it's $29 an hour that's necessarily unreasonable. We have a big high-tech industry. I'll let Career Source talk about placement, but if we're paying people to go into high-wage jobs, I feel much better about doing that than simply paying them as a grant. And the other problem with handing it to businesses, and if there's a way around it, I would consider it. I just don't know of one that's really feasible. How do we allocate that to businesses? Because that's part of what that 11% is going toward. And also, how do we verify that they're really going to pay the employees with that? The goal with this, it helps the businesses, it helps the employees, and it also helps the local economy. And yeah, it's great to help businesses. I'm not going to say otherwise, but we don't know that we're going to have all of those three. So I guess it's, instead of a buy one, buy one, get two? I'm not really sure if there's a fancy way of phrasing that, but really, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck with that. But I'll turn it over to.
Well, I agree with you on a lot of those things, and I understand where you're going with that. But I got thinking, because they're paying them 19 hours, that's $10 an hour we're doing for those extra fees. So, if you give it to the businesses and you say, if, we do with these other people, pick up another employee, you qualify for this. But all I'm saying is I think we would get more money into the community. And not that they're not wonderful. I do like Career Source, but I just think, in my heart, I think that would be a better way to get money out and give it to the businesses and let them run, let them hire their own people. But because I feel kind of funny with paying the high-end wages right now when we got these smaller businesses right now we're saying no to. And I don't know if there is more or not, and I know Tobias is going to hate this whole thing anyways. But I think if we're getting into this kind of pay, I'm almost, I don't know, I feel kind of funny giving it out, but I'm not going to support this anyway, so I'm going to be quiet now and let you guys discuss, but I just wanted you to know why I was where I was.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Mr. Abate?
Thank you, Commissioner, and appreciate the opportunity to do a few things. One, to give, and staff does have an alternate proposal that we hope all of you might consider in terms of where we are, because we've been looking at what we're doing. I'm going to start by giving you an overview so you have a general understanding, and we had promised to do this to the board, what we're doing with all the programs, what its current status is, so you know what's happening. Then I'm going to delve into each of the programs, and we do have a few recommendations to add on to what Commissioner Lober has put on there, and then hopefully we'll get some board direction in terms of where you want us to go. So let me start by giving you that really broad overview in terms of where that $105 million, which is the board's care allocation, where we stand with all of it now. You'll remember that you approved 4 different programs: public health, medical expenditure, public health compliance, and public employee reassignment. Let me give you what those numbers are in terms of what was initially in the budget and what we've incurred or anticipated to date in each of those areas. Public health had 7 million. That was for personal protective equipment, disinfecting, quarantine, things like that. We've encumbered 3.4 million, or anticipate encumbering right now 3.4 million, which leaves about 3.5 million that we still have 5 months to deal with. In the medical expenditure area, which is going to deal with antibody testing, COVID testing, medical transport. As a matter of fact, when you approved the school board, they plan to come back and say, hey, we have part-time medical technicians that help with determining students and, who might have any health issues related to COVID, et cetera. We'd like to extend that to a full day. That would be a good one to fall under medical expenditure, and we're waiting for the school board's proposal on that. You also have the hospital issue, which will be coming back to the board at some future date. You had 16 million on that, and we've only put, as of now, we have 1.4 million, so that leaves a remaining balance of 14.5 million, but there are several areas that are going to be coming up that is going to probably take a large part of that, I would anticipate. Public health expenditure, public health compliance, which deals with telework communications, thermometers, sneeze guards, plexiglass, and it's for all the different jurisdictions that are part of our program. We had 15 million to start with. We have incurred or anticipated 4 million in that area, which leaves about 10.9 million there. And public employee reassignment had 2 million. We've spent 1.7 million, or anticipate that leaves 286,000. So in those 4 programs, you have in the area of 28 million right now that's not allocated, but during the next several months, I would say I expect at least 15 to 20 million to be potentially allocated in what we're anticipating that are going to be submitted to us but have not yet at this point. You have a total of 21 million that is unobligated for public health and safety. You put that in that contingency saying, hey, we don't know what's going to happen with storms, et cetera. So that money is still there, and we haven't touched and won't be touching any of that without further direction from the board. Generally speaking, we have 4.4 million, and remember, Ian came back and we got more money just this past Tuesday that the state gave us for the housing and rental program. So we anticipate that all of that will be spent out by the time we get there. Food stability, you put 4 million. We anticipate that's going to be out there as well. The economic stability program, that's for the PPE, and I'll give you specifics on that. You gave us 500,000 for that for small businesses, and we're in the process of dealing that. You've already talked about Career Source, and if we make adjustments there, there's 750,000 that's there. And then you put 10 million towards that small business and nonprofit program, but you left 24.3 million. I think that's part of what Commissioner Lober's talking about,
yes,
where
sir.
you might get that difference of the 10 million from. So I just want to give you that. So basically, of the 105 million, 30.2 million is already anticipated to be utilized, and 74 is within those other resources that I talked about. That's the overview to the program that I wanted to give to you, just so you know where the dollars are, because I know some of you are thinking of different things potentially, and I just wanted to let you know generally what was happening. Now, let me give you just some specifics of the programs that the board's directed we put in place and the participation levels we're getting, because I think you might be interested in that. With the individual assistance program that Ian's running, there's 711 applications in there. The average assistance has been going up because, remember, you let it go over a period of months, up to 3 months. So the average assistance is right now in the area for the residents is about almost $2,800 per resident that's getting it. They have anticipating right now obligations of 1.67 million of that 4.4 million that they already have in line for those expenditures. The food stability program, they've spent 105,000 for 21,000 plus meals. They have served and are serving 757 households with that farmers market program. They're doing extensions of that program for both District 1 and District 5, which didn't have farmers markets. And so we've understand some of the cities like Titusville is very excited about seeing what's going to be happening there, that they're going to be expanding farmers markets into those two districts. And they anticipate 2.1 million being encumbered thus far, that food stability program, but they anticipate they're going to get to the whole 4 million on that one too. So I want to talk to you about that, and that's those programs. Then we have the PPE for small business programs. We received 500, and remember the board expanded that to cover restaurants and small businesses as well, retail businesses. We have 551 applications that we received. We spent the day up in Titusville. There were 102 kits that were distributed up to Titusville, and that's for all the masks, the gloves, the sanitizer, et cetera, that we were handing out. They also went in cocoa, and there were 214 of the kits were distributed in cocoa. Cocoa Beach distributed 98 in the stops that we made there. And we're going to be in Melbourne, I believe, tomorrow. And actually, I think Melbourne was today. It was 321 kits. And I think we're going into Palm Bay tomorrow. And so we'll be distributing kits there. We still are going to have resources left so that we can make another round to all these small businesses, and we'll welcome other businesses. Just wanted to let the board know that we plan to do that because we still have probably 800 kits that we anticipate will still be left, and we have additional resources from that 500,000 to go back so we can continue helping small businesses with those masks, gloves, et cetera, and let them come back in and get more, and hopefully we'll get more participation. So I think that one has been working fairly well. Commissioner Lober gave you the updates. We even have a little bit more information on that, so let me give it to you, and that way the public can also hear
Please,
about
sir.
what's happening with the small businesses. We've gotten a variety of inquiries on that. We have in process, because we're doing this online, but we are also accepting applications by paper if they want to bring it in, and then we'll have our staff put it into the online system. We have 50 staff members that are in process either as reviewers or approvers of what the reviewers do to look at applications that are submitted to try to do the best we can to help the business to be able to qualify. So we know how many are in process. That does not mean what's been submitted. That means we know that people have started completing the applications and putting the online documentation, 1,378. So that's the total. We consider 1,029 in process. That means they've started, but we're not looking at it yet because they haven't pressed the submit button or completed the application to do that. We have applications that are pending for additional information is 154. We've already sent out applications that we're looking at and are in the process of approving that has gone to the approver, 83. We have 41 applications that are under review by approvers right now. Applications that are approved are 55, and we're only 7 days into the program. So what we are moving ahead, we have $508,000 committed that we're already saying, yes, you've given us enough to qualify. That means they've done all the documentation, and staff at the reviewer and approver level has been able to verify enough that we think we will be very safe in terms of them not having to worry about the audit, and that they gave us enough information for the documentation that the Treasury's told us we need to have. So with that program, as it's going by, that we have 300 plus applications in hand, what we were going to do was suggest to the board, if you would want, if you gave the county manager the ability to extend the application period beyond Monday, and what we were going to do, unless you want to do the approach Commissioner Lober did, we'll do either one, we were going to suggest that you allow us to continue accepting new applications, and any application that we receive by the 10th, pay the full amount for, because we do not anticipate that it's going to get to the $10 million amount. And then we would continue accepting applications that are in process until such time as we have enough applications submitted that we would reach the board-approved amount, which right now is $10 million, unless you decide to extend it by whatever amount you might want to do right now. And we would continue accepting applications until we had enough that if you multiply it by $10,000, we'd reach that threshold. That way, they would all get the full amount once we complete the review. And what we're also going to suggest is we start paying out the dollars now. You know, the board's repeated, you want to get the money out as quick as possible. We were going to have to, under the prior approach, wait until we evaluated everything, make sure whether we had enough money or not, and then give them a proportionate amount if, in fact, you chose not to do that. By doing this approach, you don't have to do it that way. So we're looking for board direction on that. I don't know if you want to address that issue now. If that now might be a good
Sure, if you'd like, and then
opportunity
I'll-
for that, Commissioner.
Yeah, we can do that. Then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Tobias and Nardi for questions. But
Okay.
yeah, in the memo as well, I think I mentioned, even with what I was proposing, that we would pay out in the full amount all of those applications that qualify that were received on or before August 10th, which is this coming Monday, the deadline. I don't disagree. I think that's a good move regardless. Again, presuming we don't exceed that 10 million that's been set out. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near the 10 million, but I would still put that caveat there so we don't find out that it's now 30 million because every business that's ever existed in Brevard now is applying the last day. I don't think it's going to happen, but just to be safe. But I think there's some questions from.
And if I may,
Please.
just to make 2 points of
Yes, sir.
clarification, because it'll be important for the businesses, especially if they're watching this now. The business receipt, any business that's operating in Brevard County under the state statute should have a county business receipt. As a matter of fact, this statute provides that we are obligated to give the cities a proportionate share of what we collect. That county business receipt is $37. Many of the cities have their own, which is another statutory provision, and some of them charge substantially higher, but they're still required to get a county business receipt. We've had a lot of good success because we are not saying no to people who don't have it. What we're telling them is get the upcoming one, apply, and as long as you show us a receipt that you've applied for 2021, we're good. And so we give that check mark to what it is that you have that receipt. And so we've actually added significant amount of businesses which were not previously registered by
Right.
going through that process. So if you're okay with that, we'll continue with that.
And just real quick, because I know it ties in with this, I don't want to take away from the other commissioners' time, but as to the suggestion that I mentioned, and also in the memo that they have at least a municipal receipt, I would take that back and still leave that they have to have a county business tax receipt. I just didn't realize that was the case, Mr. Abate. So if we're helping people
Yeah.
get in conformance with the law, God bless, let's do it that way.
And I do want to say, so we don't inhibit people from applying, that currently, if they receive PPE or any other federal assistance, we are still accepting their applications. We're doing exactly what you said already. We are making sure that their revenue loss or their expenses related to COVID exceed what they've received. And so as long as they do that, if they've received $20,000 in PPP and other federal assistance, and you've had $35,000 of revenue loss or COVID-related expenses, and it has to be COVID-related expenses. One thing I think some of the business were struggling with is they are giving us their expenses from March through June, but if it wasn't during a period of closure, that's not necessarily a COVID-related expense, so it wouldn't qualify. And that's one of the issues that we've been having. But if they have the revenue loss, that they show us that they had a revenue loss from year to year during that time frame, that's more than what they've received, then that difference is something that would help them qualify for up to the 10,000 amount. So we are doing that. And we'll continue to do that, of course, Commissioner. And so one thing that you did mention is going beyond that $10 million amount. And if the board chose to do that, we just need to know that, because if you choose to go on the approach that staff has suggested, what we would change is the 10 million to 12, and we continue, or whatever amount you might say is appropriate. We would continue accepting applications until they would all, if qualified, run out of the whatever board amount that you chose to give us. So that's how we would continue doing that. So
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I
Please.
reserve the time until after Career Source
Yeah,
speaks?
just
I know
remind
they're
me
waiting.
if it gets discombobulated
Certainly.
here, or
Thank
if you want to press it again, I can certainly, okay, thanks. All right, Commissioner Nardi, then Commissioner Smith.
I almost forget what I was going to talk about. I think for me, it was sort of, my suggestion was going to be what your suggestion was, and we didn't have any memo on this other than Commissioner Lober's today, but was expanding the amount of time for people to apply, because I think people were getting nervous that they weren't going to be able to get their stuff together, so I'm excited that we're going to do that. Anything we can do that gets these funds out sooner. I don't want us to be with tens of millions of dollars when it could have gone, directly to help, even with direct assistance. And if you're telling me that the food stability program is already getting close to capping, maybe we need to look at expanding that number too, along with the assistance, the rent and the utility assistance.
Makes sense.
And we'll be happy to bring that back.
As long as it's COVID related, I can't see
Yes.
why it wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely, Ian, I know will be more than happy to come back on those two programs, so we will come back to you on that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I would like to double up on what Commissioner Isnardi said about the food assistance. I think that would be well worth something that we should do. I would like to see us extend for the nonprofits too. Or is that in your plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That would be, because that's one program that we have right
Okay.
now.
And I agree also that we should be paying out now. The businesses that have already qualified, don't let them wait. Let's get them their money and let them move on.
Yeah, I just needed to come back to the board for this approval because of what was previously approved.
Yeah, so here's, in light of what I've just heard, I actually would modify what I would propose or what I would be asking for. And I appreciate, Mr. Abate, the clarification. I apologize. I think we weren't connecting on a couple of those items, and that's entirely my fault. That said, I would suggest, as I think everyone seems to agree, that after Monday, August 10th, presuming we don't exceed the 10 million that was set out, that staff, as quickly as they're reasonably able to, get those folks that qualify paid for whatever amount they qualified for up to the 10,000 cap. That would be one thing. And then over and above that, was the time period 10 days, or how long did we say we were leaving it open, sir?
We were going to leave it open
Originally?
until Monday. Originally it was 10 days,
10
which was
days.
10 business days, so we left it open for 14 calendar days.
So why don't we, since we have another meeting within that time frame again, do a second application period? It's going to run back to back. So starting as soon as this one runs out, which would it be 11:59 p.m. on Monday the 10th? Is that correct? Ms. Bentley, is that your understanding?
Yeah.
Or Mr. Bate?
Yes.
So
yes.
whatever the last millisecond or nanosecond of Monday is, as soon as we hit Tuesday, we open up a second round of funding, because I think we've already addressed what we would do with respect to those folks that came in that first pool. And the second pool, we would have another 10-day period, and we could readdress it before the 10-day period is out, just as we're doing now, where instead of capping it to 8,000 per business, let's leave them with the 10. I don't think there's a reason to penalize them at this point, hearing what I've heard now. We'll keep the same requirements as we previously had. Essentially, it's going to be a second funding program. The folks that got in earlier have the advantage of getting paid sooner, but we're not treating them differently in any respect.
Sounds good.
So, okay, so can I have a motion at least for that? So as far as, just to keep it totally clear,
Make a motion to approve that.
all right, are you all good with that? So we're talking both about paying out on that first round with the caveat that they're not to exceed the 10 million, and then the second, we will take the difference. We'll take whatever's left over in that first round, whatever number that is, 3 million, 7 million, 5 million. We'll take that, and we'll take the difference between 10 and add it to what's left over to come up with that second pool of 10 million to use to fund that second opening portion. Again, with the same criteria, so Commissioner Smith's concern with the nonprofits is incorporated with that same exact criteria. It's open to the same people, no more, no less. Is that what your motion contemplates, Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I was just going to add another 10 to it, because we had 40, we pulled 10 out, so maybe we can just give them a total of 20, because we're probably going to have to find a way to get that into these hands of the businesses anyways. We could always pull it back if there's stuff left. but-
I'm more, well, the board can do what the board wants to do, and if they prefer that, that's great, but I would be more comfortable adding it later, just because my concern is we over-allocate with 4 months left in the
We
year.
pull it back, though, right?
It's harder to take it back once it's gone out, that's my concern. It's much easier to add it like we're doing right
But
now.
if we have enough businesses that come in that need it, that would feel really good to get it into their hands.
And if we, and I'll tell, if this makes you more comfortable too, Commissioner Pritchett, if if it makes sense, we can ask Mr. Abate to reach out to me to let me know if we're getting remotely close to it
Perfect.
running out. I'll call a special meeting, I don't mind.
Perfect.
And I
Well,
think everyone's been good with that,
Yeah,
too.
quit the special meetings, but,
You gotta earn that money.
okay, that sounds good. If
Yeah,
it gets
I
close,
promise,
we
I'm not,
do.
I'm not
Yeah.
looking to remove anyone's opportunity to get funded if they qualify, and we'll
Okay.
present it to the board again if that's the case. So that's, I think we're clear with that motion. We got a couple lights, though.
I also, when we do this, I wouldn't mind if, once we do this, if we put another 5 million towards Ian if he needs it for housing and food too. So just so you guys have that ready in case, yes, sir.
Does that amount make sense to you, sir?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to address one other issue, but I want
Please.
you to deal with the motion that you want to deal with here first, so I know what number
Okay.
I'm
And
looking
then
at.
Commissioner Tobias had a light on as well. Let's hear from him, sir.
A couple things. I didn't know we were going straight to 10 or 20 or maybe $40 million so darn
10.
quickly. Well, it grew from there. It seems like the consensus here is to get money in people's hands as quickly as possible. And while I disagree with that sentiment, the way to do that you're proposing is to give it to businesses, which is another level. I mean, if you really wanted to get this in people's hands, you would do as the Trump administration did and give people a $1,200 check. That's what gets money in people's hands, and then conceivably, those individuals then spend the money at the businesses. So you go to people first before
Very small
businesses. I'm not advocating either, but I'm just saying there's inconsistency in the argument. But I do want to give an alternative, and I appreciate you going through your the white paper that you did here. You certainly
sir.
spent a lot of time with it, and had I known that we were going to discuss this in such great detail, I certainly probably would have done this. But I looked at what other counties were doing with this money, and a number of the other counties were distributing money to their municipalities. Constantly we are heard that government closer to the people is better, and the people in Titusville understand what runs the businesses in Titusville better than what runs than we do at the county level as a group. And I'm not advocating for giving pots of money as you suggested, but in retrospect, it's probably better than the path we're going down here. So. And then Commissioner Pritchett has mentioned we need to sharpen our pencils because we're going to have some revenue shortfalls. So I'm trying to put this stuff all together to see if we can accomplish all these goals with this money that we have here. And I think there actually is a way. As you guys probably know, we're on the hook for approximately $7 million a year in CRA payments. And we can turn over some of this money to cities in lieu or fronting the CRA payments, so they would get all of the money ahead of time, and local governments could then conceivably in the CRA districts front the money to those businesses in the ways that they see fit, giving more local control there. We have CRAs in all our districts, in Titusville, Cocoa, Satellite Beach, Rockledge, Palm Bay, Cape Canaveral, West Melbourne. And if we were to front the money for the life of the TIF payments, yes, it would be in the range of what we're talking, 20 or 30 million bucks. But when we have $7 million a year that is coming out of general fund, this would fill a hole and not decrease any level of service, as well as giving that local control to Titusville or Melbourne or downtown Cocoa. And if Titusville wanted to hand it to businesses and Melbourne wanted to hand it to individuals, as long as we entered into an interlocal agreement where we were indemnified for the proper use of the CARES fund, the administration would be handled by them instead of us, and we could get the money out in a quick fashion and save our general fund, our precious general fund budget, millions and millions of dollars, not only this year, but for I'm looking at the sunset date on many of these CRAs, we're talking into the 2040s.
We can do that?
To do that, you'd have to have an interlocal
Interlocal
agreement. 'Cause
agreement.
what he's suggesting is that the CRAs would stop.
This might be brilliant.
So here's my thought, if I may.
By all means.
So you brought up something that frankly I don't think occurred to any of the other commissioners up here, certainly didn't occur to me. A few thoughts, and I think there's good and there's bad. First, and I mean, this is more of a philosophical question. I don't know that there's a right answer. It's the chicken or the egg conundrum, where if we give people money, then they can spend it at businesses. Okay, makes sense. But if we give businesses money and they employ people and pay them, then they can spend it at businesses. I don't know where it's best to start that. I don't know, I have my opinion, but my opinion's not necessarily any better or worse than your opinion. It's a subjective question. I understand where you're coming from.
And if we were to hit it to the cities, right, the individual cities could make that decision instead of us making that
The
decision.
indemnification idea, though, is great because you hit the biggest concern that I had. Well, we're on the hook because we got the money and the conditions apply to us that if they don't qualify now, we can have it clawed back and be on the hook. So that makes sense, providing they have assets that are sufficient to actually suggest that they're able to indemnify us other than just give us their word of honor. Here's what I can tell you. I've taken, I think, more of a centrist approach with the CRAs than I think any other commissioner. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. I think probably half the people love it and half the people hate it. But I've not had a problem making use of funds that otherwise would have gone to CRAs to improve infrastructure in the area. I've done that. We did that with the Sykes Creek Bridge on Sea Ray Drive. Great, wonderful. That was kind of a combination carrot and stick approach. I think they knew the alternative wasn't necessarily going to be to their liking. It benefits the same people that would benefit from them spending in a different way, perhaps a wider audience. But my concern with this is I don't know that without the ability to think it over and to run it by our colleagues at the cities that I could support it tonight. I really want to be a good partner to the cities. It's something, if they're interested in, I would feel a lot more comfortable going forward with.
And I'm sorry, I did a poor job.
That's all right.
Since this would be an interlocal agreement, both parties would have to agree to this type of contract. Titusville, for example, we're on the hook for a TIF payment of Titusville, and my numbers are a year old here, but it was $288,000. So, for the next 20 years. So if we were to hand, roughly that math, $5 or $6 million to Titusville, and conceivably Titusville could make the determination on what businesses or what individuals, that would free up money that in the general fund that I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to spending that money on infrastructure in Titusville. There are county roads that are all over Titusville. But what it does, it gives us more discretion to make the determination with the funds that we collect. Now, the CRAs would have the money up front, so they could decide, how to best expend those money. They would be held harmless in this. In fact, an argument could be made that not only would they have more flexibility with their businesses, but they could, you couldn't directly do it, but you could look at, your debt structure and how you wanted to handle it that way. So I think this is something that, potentially, and again, my motion would be to ask the county manager and potentially the county attorney to reach out, because this came to me this morning, in all honesty, looking at what other counties had done with this.
Yes, sir.
To see if they were interested, because if the cities are not interested in receiving these funds, then obviously this is a moot point. But I think this is something that probably could be done in very expeditious fashion.
So here's what I would say before I turn it over to.
Does this have to be COVID related, or do they have more flexibility?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
and on
It has
top
to
of
be spent by December.
correct, so it would have to be, and then there would be
But then we're
indemnification.
not
I
having to
almost
do
forget
it,
what
they
I was
can
gonna
do
talk
it.
Correct, and there's
Doesn't matter.
indemnification, so I don't think any city would spend it incorrectly, but
Right.
if they did, we wouldn't, while we would be on the hook technically for it, the indemnification would allow us to go back to the city the exact same way that Satellite Beach spent CRA funds incorrectly and had to return those CRA funds back to us. So, I trust Titusville will do it. I trust Satellite Beach would do it. But just in case they don't, they have the revenue source to repay us over time.
So right before I turn it over to Commissioner Smith, my thought with this, looking at the numbers and doing the quick math, not being a CPA by any means, so hopefully it's decent enough. This isn't mutually exclusive, even if we want to do this, from anything we're talking about tonight. Right. With the amounts that we're talking, we'll have 8 digits left over, and we can absolutely approve everything we're talking about tonight, or some percentage of what the board wants to approve tonight, come back and then do this with the remainder.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep. Unfortunately, it is mutually exclusive. The sheer number, again, we're on the hook, as I'm sure you know. General fund, more than $7 million a year in TIF payments for these CRAs. When you look at that, some going as far as 2042. You could very quickly go through the unallocated plus other money. Just looking at the 3 below the line, the Cocoa downtown, the Melbourne downtown, and the Titusville, that's $25 million right there. So absolutely.
The worry, though, that I have, I think everyone here is focused on getting the money out to the people that need it quickly. Even if it doesn't cover 100% of what you're looking to cover, if it covers 80% of what you're looking to cover, you're still getting the vast majority of what you're suggesting, which may be great. I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know at this point because it's so fresh in my mind. I haven't had a chance to talk to the cities about it. I don't want to put everything else on hold, seeing as how this other program is no longer going to be available after Monday if we don't take action on the motion that we've had that was seconded. So again, I might support it in the future, and I'm not saying that to kick it off.
I'm sure you have the votes, but can we bifurcate the motion? Because I have no problem with extending the initial program to $10 million, the time period to allow folks, and even pay out the ones that got it in on time. But you're talking about allocating another $10 million. So
I could get behind that.
So and listen, I would have a special meeting on this, and for all I know, the cities aren't amenable to this. But I imagine if I'm a city council member in Titusville, and the county says, "Would you like some money up front that you can spend right now in the areas of your CRA?" I would think that I would like that discretion instead of And again, we would not be the first one doing this. To give you an idea, Miami-Dade allocated just under 25% of their funds to the municipalities in their area. It started at $30 million. It ended up at just over $100 million.
Okay, I may end up withdrawing my motion and making a new one, but let's hear from Commissioner Smith first.
I like thinking outside the box, so I like trying to wrap my head around what Commissioner Tobias is saying. But I don't want to get off track because we're working on one thing and he's jumping in with another, and there's an awful lot to be considered with what he said and a lot that we could go over. So my first thought when he mentioned it was a 1 year. I wasn't thinking about doing the whole 6, 12, 15 years, whatever. That's one. Number two, we've got cities that don't have CRAs, so they're going to get left out. So those are things that we have to talk about. So that's why I'm thinking maybe we put this off till the next meeting and just keep going forward with what we're doing here to get that out of the way and button that up. That's my thought.
And well, let me ask Commissioner Risnardi. I really, I'm kind of torn at this point between the two. What do you think, Commissioner?
I think there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think we need to just take a breath. I like Commissioner Tobias' idea, and I think there may be a way to, if you get someone to buy into an interlocal agreement, odds are they're not going to have to be paid out 100%. That's just because if some of these CRAs are, 20 years in the future, that expectation of getting 100% payout early and upfront would be unrealistic, even if they are willing to do the interlocal. So we may be able to actually get out cheaper than that entire number. If you say there's 20 million left on a CRA or 15 million, we may be able to get out of that CRA with 8 of it. So it's always a possibility. But again, I think we need to do a temperature check on where these cities. I have a feeling it may not go as rosy as we may hope. But I really like the idea. I think it's a great idea. But I'd like to also see it on paper too.
So what is your thought, before I turn it over to Commissioner Pritchett, on either just extending the existing program without upping the funding, or alternatively going the way that I
I'm fine
originally
with that.
suggested?
I'm fine with, because, I mean, we're talking a meeting, right? I mean, I want to extend the applications, of course.
So, Commissioner Bate, before we turn it over, I just want to make sure that we get all the info so everyone's able to discuss what
Call the
we've got
commissioner.
available. I think I did that last time, or I started doing it. I corrected myself at least that time. I'm getting old. Yeah, I've been called a lot worse, Commissioner. That said, so I guess, what we may end up doing, and I'll certainly go the way the board wants to on this. I'm not, I'm not too solid in either camp at this point still, but if we were to hypothetically simply extend that, we would keep, as far as the two portions of the motion that was made and seconded earlier, we had obviously setting up the new round with a full $10 million complement, partially funded out of what was left over from the first and partially out of the unallocated. That was one component. The other component was paying out those folks that qualify up to the max, presuming we don't exceed 10 million, which was allocated, for those folks that get in before the deadline Monday. I'd be okay, certainly, and I think everyone's okay with the second of those two things, the latter of the two, paying out those folks that get in, presuming everything that we discussed is able to be achieved. But if we wanted to go ahead and extend that until the next meeting, or let's say a few days after the next meeting, is that something that you think is feasible without altering the amount that's been allocated to do it?
Yeah, yes, we could do that, or you could just authorize me to continue accepting applications until we reach that amount of money. Now, we would still have other applications in process that, we can go back to if you want to extend it beyond that.
All right, here's what I'm thinking, folks. I'm going to withdraw my original motion. I would keep the first half of the motion in a new motion as far as paying out with all the caveats that have been discussed and laid out in the memo here at the dais, and then additionally authorize the county manager to extend the existing program until he reaches a level of concern, at which point he'll reach out to me. I'll call a special meeting if we're not coming up in a reasonable amount of time on an existing meeting that's already been scheduled, so we can re-up it.
We would be sticking with the original 10 million, is that what
Yeah, we
you're
would
saying?
not up the
Okay.
authorization. And I would just say, if you get to maybe 7.5 or 8, reach out to me, because at that point, by the time we get a meeting put together and do what we need to do, we may be, really nearing that. So that, yeah, where do you think you are right now, Mr. Bate, in terms of the numbers?
Well, we're way below 3 million.
So I don't think we're at any risk based on that being way below 3 million. Okay, so that would be my motion. Can I get a second on that? Second from Commissioner Tobias. All right, Commissioner Pritchett and then Commissioner Tobias again.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, but maybe next conversation too, we find out how much Ian needs. I really want to get money out to him. I'm thinking about the CRA thing. If I'm sitting up a CRA and you're offering that money, well, then I also, if I take that money and I got to use it on COVID, I've lost the ability to pay other bills. So I'm not, I love the idea if we can figure out how to do it to get it into their hands and cut off an obligation we're going to have later, but I think it's going to have to be a carrot and a caveat. So I don't know. I was just thinking about that as a city if I would do it. But I do love your idea of getting into the cities and let them start handing it out. I think they're closer. I know you're making that face, but you did say it. But they're closer to the people, and they might have a easier time. And then it takes a little pressure off the county staff also. So I want to get it out.
Commissioner Tobias, seeing as how you're the only light on right now, before we get too detached from the motion that's been made that you seconded, do you mind if I call the question on that, then I'll turn it over to you again? All right, I'll go ahead and call the question. Everyone knows what we're voting on, correct? Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, Commissioner Tobias, thank you, sir.
Just a response. Again, this would be an interlocal, so it would certainly be up to cities to make these decisions. If Frank can negotiate that, obviously a CRA would look at TIF payments, and they assume that TIF payments are going to increase over time. So 100% payout may be actually less than what they would receive over a period of time. And Commissioner Smith certainly brought up a very good point. There are cities that, in my opinion, made the wise economic decision not to enter into a CRA. And I have some calculations of handing over money to those cities in the same fashion that we would based on population as well. So Indialantic doesn't have one, and we shouldn't penalize them for not doing that. So they would get a payment, and since there would be no CRA, the only thing we would need on that would be an indemnification, that this has to be used for those type of purposes, or Indian Harbor Beach or anything. So, it was just a starting point was the CRAs, but I certainly didn't want to leave, Grant Valkyria or a Malabar out, but this MIMS out, this would certainly turn over the burden that, Mr. Abate had mentioned, that we had 50
Palm
folks.
Shores?
Palm,
Yeah, that's true,
the
too.
happy Palm Shores they don't have the CRA anymore. Sorry, that wasn't nice. So either way, just an alternative. But I would ask when we get a little further if we could authorize Frank to at least make those calls and see if that is something they're interested. Because if they don't, you're right, we need to move forward with
Yes,
an
sir.
alternative plan.
Mr. Abate, do you feel that you need the motion? Because it sounds like no one's arguing with that suggestion.
Well, I mean, I'd like the motion so I could tell the cities.
All right, I'm going to
more
accept that as a
clearly we
motion.
had
I'll
that
second it.
direction, and that would be great.
We'll just call the question to get this moving. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. You've got it.
Good. Now, let me-
Yes, sir.
may I go back to
Please.
what you raised with Ian, because I'm getting these notes
The
from
food
Ian.
stability?
Yeah.
Please.
Back to the actually to the program for the housing and utility assistance. What he'd like to know if the board, and this will make it easier for us to get the funds out earlier, that we had a provision in there that said you had to have a 25% income loss. If we could eliminate that position and just let them prove to the satisfaction that they had, that they had losses that were COVID related, and that justified it, instead of them having to show a 25%. And the state's not requiring a 25%, so if you would allow
I make a
those
motion
waivers,
to
et cetera.
change that.
Yes.
Where are our numbers again? I just want to make sure we're not going to put ourselves in a bad
No,
spot.
Actually, the actual dollars that went out are low. We were like, I believe, at the rate that he was going, he's at 1.6 million, but we had 4.4 million dedicated. So he thinks
think
this will
it's
help
safe-
us get the money out.
Do you think it's safe
quicker.
just to get rid of it, or to maybe reduce it to 10 and then see how we do?
I mean, if you get rid of it, then it takes that burden. Theirs is a more difficult process, and that's what's happening right
Okay.
now.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett to do that, and then we have a second from Commissioner Isnardi. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, so as far as the food stability, which Commissioner Pritchett wanted to get to, let's address that real briefly. And I apologize to the folks that came from CareerSource. I promise we will be extra nice to you and give you ample time and have our most polite possible discussion with you guys, because you've been more than patient with us.
Are we able to wait to add money to that till next meeting,
To
the food stability program?
yes, and Ian
Okay.
is going to figure out what the needs are. He said he would have it ready at the next meeting.
Okay, just so you know, I'm open to spend another 5 million. Y'all think about it, so when we move forward.
I'd ask for a staff recommendation when you come back with that, whether it's 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. Just let me know what you think it ought to take and how long you think that'll fund it for.
Thank
And
you.
I'm happy to consider increasing it to some reasonable amount. All right, so let's, if that's all right, let's go forward with CareerSource. I'm so sorry that you all had to wait this long. I really do apologize. And again, just to kind of recap what the original ask was that I was suggesting when we started, we allocated $750,000 to them to fund every business that applied with one employee. It would require 1.5 million additional. And if we want to fund those businesses which asked for more than one employee, whether they asked for 2, 20, or 2 million employees, to fund those for a second employee, not beyond that. So the folks that ask for 2 will get everything they ask for. The folks that ask for 10 will get 2/10 of it. That's another million. So the max ask at this point would be 2.5 million. I think the 1.5 million to me is a lot easier based on the fact everyone would then get one. The only question in my mind is that the second question of that million on top to fund those who requested multiple for that second employee. But let's have Judy come up, and I've worked with Judy in the past. She's been great. And then, do you go by Tom or Thomas, sir? Tom? Perfect. Yeah, if you all want to both come up, I'm happy to let you all tag team it. I'll be as easy and loosey-goosey with the rules with this as I possibly can. You all have been more than patient.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman and Commissioners. First, if you're agreeable, I'd like to give you
Oh,
all
hang
an
on a sec. Let me.
Yeah. can
Okay, there
hear
you are.
me?
If you could start again, ma'am.
Okay, first, thank you. And if you're agreeable, I'd like to give each of you an update on where we are in the program at this point. So the program is up and running. We had the application period open for 10 business days, 12 calendar days, and in that time we received 160 applications from, again, to remind you, small businesses, 50 or employees or less, for-profit, nonprofits, and they had to be operational as of January 1st. And so as the applications were coming in tandem, Thomas and his team were assigning them out and starting to connect with those businesses. So to date, of the 160, the team is working diligently to connect with the employers, get them the documentation that's required to ensure eligibility and move forward. So at this point, we have 31 employers that have completed those required documentations. We've referred those over to the staff and agencies, again, to remind you, the individuals that are being rehired by the businesses that were affected are actually being employed through a staffing agency, which eliminates and alleviates any liability for things like workers' comp, payroll taxes, any types of benefits that those individuals may want to take part in. And then there's no hit to their unemployment rates if indeed they have to release them again at the end of the program. So we have 24 of those applications in process with the staff and agencies, and as of the middle of this week, they've put 10 individuals back to work. So the average wage of those individuals at this point, those that we have been through in process is $19.91 an hour. So we're really pleased to see that the wages are much higher than what we originally estimated that it would be when we asked for the $750,000. Again, we didn't know what the response would be, but I think it indicates that there's a lot of value, there's a lot of need in the 10 days to have the 160 applications. We've seen wages from $12 an hour up to $45 an hour. We're not seeing any recurring theme, if you will, in the applications other than it's across the board. So the need is there. The applications are coming in all across the county from Titusville to South Palm Bay. They're in accommodation, lodging, retail, customer service, healthcare, entertainment, transportation, legal offices, engineering offices. So and as Commissioner Lober indicated, with the $750,000 that we have, based off of the wages that the business indicated was the prevailing wage of the individual in which they want to rehire, at this point, we're only going to be able to fund 33% of the 160 applications, which is about 53 individuals. So again, 1.5 based off of the wage of the 160 applications for the first individual that they indicated was their priority to bring back. That's where the additional funding would be needed if you approve one at each business that we got an application from. So with that, I'll entertain any questions. If I cannot answer it, like you all to meet Thomas LaFleur. He is our industry relations manager, and it is Thomas and his team that are executing the program, and they're doing a phenomenal job in a short period of time.
I tend to trust men wearing plaid. There's something about it. I don't know why I'd say that, but Mr. Ellis, yeah, that's a good point, Commissioner. Yeah, I don't know where folks are. You know, my thought, and again, obviously everyone has their own position with respect to how best to handle this. I really think we should, at a dead minimum, do the 1.5 to give everyone their one employee. You know, I think that's something that will have a very quick impact on the local community. You know, we've heard they already have people that are back to work as a result of what we've done. The only question is where the commission is on doing the multiple. I don't think if someone asks for 100 employees, we should say, oh, yes, absolutely. There's got to be a limit so that we make this money touch as many businesses as possible and as many individuals as possible. I don't know that I have a problem by any means with a second employee for those that ask for multiple. I certainly understand why their suggestion is leaving it at that. I think that's reasonable. I just don't know where other folks are on it.
2 works for me.
Commissioner Smith? So we would say, okay, so it would be 1.5 to fund the remaining 2/3 with 1, and then another $1 million to fund everyone that requested more than 1, whether it's 2 or 20, with an additional. If you're good with that, if you want to make the motion, there aren't any other lights at this point, so.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I think that, again, we're putting the hands in people that need a job, had a job, and it'll put them back to work. They can buy their own food, they can pay for their own rent, and they can be in the community spending money.
Commissioner Tobias, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm sorry, this is, I guess, Ms. Pritchett brought this up, and I guess if I'd have thought about it a little more, I might have been on the other side of the fence, but I'm just trying to do the math here. You said the average, but we're talking high one, you said was $45 an hour, was I listening? Times 40 hours a week, we're employing them. And then 16 weeks?
Yes, 16 weeks is the maximum amount of
Got
time.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's overhead on top of that, administrative costs and all that good nonsense, of roughly what, 11%?
Mm-hmm. Well, sure.
I mean, give me a ballpark number.
Well, if I may, the $45, what we had to do when we received the applications was look at a scale. So if a wage was 45,
I'm just taking your number, man.
Sure.
Just what your
Just to explain.
You
I
don't
promise
need to explain.
That's
It's
right.
your number. You don't need to explain your number. Just tell me what your overhead is.
Well, the overhead is
10%,
11.
15%, 11%. That's fine.
Well, our administrative fee is 11% on the grant, and again, that's required.
That's fine.
Federally. There is a administrative fee that the staffing agency adds on top of the wage, and that's all based off of the occupation,
Ballpark that.
20%
Well, okay. So
on top of the wage rate
so
only.
You know, I just want to understand this, and Rita's you're gonna tell me here real quickly. I mean, 45 times 40 times 16, you're roughly at about $30,000 bucks. Just
Yes,
under,
but-
right?
but
Then we add 10% on top of that, so now we're at 33,000. And then the staffing agency needs 20%. I don't know if you're gonna add the 20% to the 10%, because that's like
No,
taxing the
it-
tip. So let's you know, and I hate when they do that and they get it. Yeah,
Hang
I
on,
get it.
Commissioner Pritchett, I'm gonna put your mic on.
So yeah, I'm just doing the math here. You know, we're looking at in the neighborhood of a little bit over and Ms. Pritchett will give you $40,000 to employ someone that I'm not sure that company wouldn't otherwise already employ. Now, if you know, it's terrible that people are out of work, but I want to get the biggest bang for the buck. And when we're focusing $40,000 on one person, I don't know if that's the best expenditure on resources. When you say it's great that wages are higher, in all honesty, if we're going to do a direct handout, I'd almost rather wages be lower. Because if wages are lower, then we can help more people meet their basic benefits, that being rent. But conceivably someone that is making $45 an hour, that's $90,000 a year. That person, that's more than I make teaching. That person had better have saved up for rent or house or car. I'm concerned about the person that's making, $9 or $10 an hour that doesn't have the luxury to pay for Florida prepaid or have, car insurance paid at 6 months at a time. And I think that those are the folks. Now, it's not very Republican-like for me to say that we need to focus in on the people that probably have been impacted the most by this, but it's not the guy or girl that makes $90,000.
Right.
It's the person that's making $11 or $12 an hour. And yeah, there may be some in there, but I'm sorry, when we're helping folks by your own admission that are making $90,000 a year, and then when we're adding 30% administrative costs on that, I'm sorry, I unless I'm missing something, I just don't think that this is the best use of funds.
Commissioner, a couple thoughts on that. First, I understand where you're coming from, but the fact is, whether someone's earning $20,000 a year or $120,000 a year, if they can't afford their rent or mortgage because they lost their job on account of COVID or were severely underemployed on account of COVID, it's still a problem. I know when we looked at the housing assistance program, we talked about that as well, and it was something I think everyone appreciated the concern. If you can't pay your rent because a virus that no one would have predicted would come through came through, it's still a concern, and it puts people in a spot where, frankly.
But I'll just
Sure.
go back. I'll just go back to what Trump, our president did, right? He said, if you made more than $75,000, I'm not giving you $1,200. And he said, if you made more than $99,000, I'm not giving you anything. So we have a conservative president that is taking a different tact than what you would be advocating here on that. I'm sorry, I'm trying any argument to
I hear you, sir.
I'm trying,
well,
man.
Here's the thing, and look, I'm not. It's the 80-20 rule is all I'll say with respect to that. I don't agree with 100% of what anyone does, including my spouse or well, maybe my dog. Maybe I agree with 100% of what he does. But truly, I'm not going to go there. What I will say, though, is I don't know, and I certainly have never heard from staff that they're comfortable saying that we can place applicants as well for the same or for a lower cost. That's the real question for me. Because we can talk about all sorts of things, but if you want an apples-to-apples comparison, that's really the question. And I've not heard at any point in the process from Frank or from anyone in the county manager's office or anyone under that umbrella that we have the ability with a reasonable degree of comfort to say we can do the same or better job for the same or less money.
No, I'm not arguing with you, but I have a fundamental difference in where government is, right? I don't think our job is to make sure that Joe's Crab Shack has someone that is working the fryer or someone that is managing it. I think our job is to create a level playing field, so we encourage these businesses to go out here. So I'm not arguing that we can't do it for any less. My argument is that we should go for the public welfare and infrastructure, and the people that fall through the cracks, those folks that are ill-equipped and for one reason or another don't have the ability, and these are not the people making $90,000.
Oh, I hear you.
These are not the people making $90,000, but we focus in the same way that even Scrooge Tobiah has said, hey, listen, the food subsistence is important. These folks, that is a fundamental need, one that we need to take care of. But again, just understand that it's not, these are folks by their own admission is $90,000, and then by what Commissioner Pritchett pointed out, and I didn't understand the first time I probably should have listened a little more, that it's a 10% and then a 20%. I mean, this is almost a government handout to these. I don't know that the staffing agent should receive any money if they're getting a 20% off the top. I mean, of 2.5 million. What is it? $500,000?
Well, Commissioner, let me just try to address a couple of the points that you mentioned. And I know you've gone on a couple of topics. I don't know them to cover everything, but first off, as far as the contention of what we should be spending the money on, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but we don't have the luxury of spending it on things like infrastructure that you mentioned out of this funding. It's just not an option for us. I agree we should be covering the people that are falling through the cracks. And what I'm talking about doing tonight, and what we started doing before, is covering exactly those folks. You're talking about people who've had a profound change in their income due to something that arguably is no fault of their own. Look, I'm with you in the sense that this whole program that was instituted by the federal government, I think it's terrible for future generations, but I'm not going to take the money that they've given us to prove a point that no one other than we will get and send it back. I want to make as much use of the money that we have available, and frankly, we have the ability to help a lot of people across a broad spectrum of society, the folks that are poor, the folks that are middle class. $12 to $45. $12 is not a tremendous wage. $45 is certainly a decent wage, but we're talking about, out of the 105 point something million, we're talking today about at most 2.5 million. That's the potential vote here if we include everything in today. But I don't want to waste too much time here. I know Commissioner Rosnardi's had her light on for a little while. I want to get to her, and then Commissioner Pritchett, and then I'm happy to see where things go. Commissioner Rosnardi?
And I don't have a problem with helping, small businesses, but essentially we're helping CareerSource get an administrative fee, although that's not your goal. We're helping a staffing agency make their profit from the employee. We're helping the business with a free employee. I mean, if we want to help small businesses and we want to help people get their jobs back, we should be directly giving money to the businesses. So I appreciate the effort. I just don't think it's the best way to do it. I feel like we're going around the block when we can go directly to the businesses. So I'd rather give them money directly. If they can show the loss, the COVID loss and the loss of employee because they can't afford to pay them, I'd much rather give that money directly to the business to help employ that person. And nobody's getting paid in administrative fees or commissions or anything. So
who would handle that then?
Well, obviously, it would be through the same application process that we use now. It would still be the small business that applies for the grant or for the funding, and they just show to staff, just like they show their COVID loss. They show that, they throw that in as part of the application. We shouldn't be vetting employees and using a staffing agency. No, of course not. But this is a program that we're not forced to use. This is a program that we're choosing to use with CareerSource. So I don't know. I just don't think it's the best use of funds.
Commissioner Pritchett, then I've got some questions for staff.
Okay, I'm there, and I just want you guys to know you're wonderful. I think CareerSource is wonderful, and we came after you, didn't come after us, so this is nothing to do with you at all. But that's where I'm at, too. I think instead of giving a company $14,000, keep someone employed, and we're only giving the businesses $10,000, I think it'd be better just to up to the businesses so they can hire more people, and then we've kind of reached our goal, and we're not paying the extra 30% in the surcharges. But you guys are wonderful. I just want to make sure you know that.
Commissioner Smith.
I want to direct a question to Mr. Abate.
Sir.
How did we wind up with CareerSource? What was I think we discussed this at the last meeting, they're in the business of doing what we're asking them to do, and they don't work for free. Is that not correct?
Right, as Commissioner Lober said, I think initially approached
Correct.
CareerSource on this.
So I get what you're saying. I agree 100%. It would be nice if we could just, nothing against you guys, but if we can skip you, that gives us 20% more or whatever.
11.
But how do we get the monies out there? Who's going to administer it? We already have a staff that's overwhelmed with doing what they normally do. Now they're doing COVID. I don't know. I don't know if there is an answer.
And Mr. Abate, I guess really the question comes back to what I mentioned before. Are we as a county organization, are we able to place the applicants as well for the same or less dollars? I just haven't heard that from anyone in the county umbrella. If you tell me yes, then that changes the equation entirely. I just have never heard that.
Commissioners, we took on the small business grant program. We're going to do it very cost effectively, relatively. That is 1,000 and something applications where we had the 4 chambers were not in a position to do it, and our staff is going to do that. And that's because they're very dedicated to getting something done, I would not ask them, based on where we are now, to add an additional burden of trying to do this program on top of it. So it's not that I don't think we have the ability to do it. We, from a staffing perspective, with everything going on, we are dedicating a lot of resources right now to do the small business program and everything there. And so I don't see that, at this point, that we'd be in a position to do it.
Commissioner Rosnardi.
I just want everyone to keep in mind, we are choosing, or we are looking at this as an obligation to place applicants. And that's not our obligation. This is, we're trying to decide how to best allocate these monies. Again, if you put that money directly to the businesses that show that they've had to let employees go, I have a pretty good bet that you could handle that, correct?
Well, yeah, I'm talking about doing exactly
You're talking
what they
about
were
doing an applicant
right?
program, trying to get
That's
people
different.
reemployed and all that.
I mean,
But
I
I'm
believe-
saying that this is not a requirement of this board. This board has not said to you as a collective, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're doing, and it's carved in stone. This is something we chose, or something that we're discussing as a possibility of doing. There's no
Oh, of
obligation
course,
that we
yeah,
do it.
this was not
Because I
mandatory.
like Commissioner Tobias, of course, he hates the program, I get it, but I would much rather get that money directly to the people in the most painless way possible. Now, writing a stimulus check to every Brevard resident is not feasible, because they'd all get less than $200. Even at the full funding of the $105 million. But I get what you're saying. I'd much rather give people the money directly as well.
And that's the concern that I have. We can certainly give it to businesses through the existing program. We can expand the funding, expand the amounts that they're eligible for. But the concern is, if we want to help not just the businesses, but also the job seekers, this is the way that we guarantee that that happens. If we just give it to the businesses, we have absolutely no way of knowing that they're going to hire more people on account of that. We have no way of knowing that. We don't know what the salaries are going to be. We don't know if there's going to be a single person at it. So that's my worry. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, well, the PPP funding, when they gave it to the businesses, they were able to hire back, and that's mostly what everybody did. But something interesting with that, too, and you brought this up, is that when that money came out, those funds did not cover payroll taxes. So, with us doing this, we're doing something the federal government didn't even do with those funds. That kind of made me like, ill a little bit with all those other funds that we're handing out. But I agree with Commissioner Isnardi. I think give it to the small businesses. And if you're a small business, or maybe we can increase it to medium business, if they've got the money, they're going to hire staff, because that's how they make their product. They're going to do better, and people will get their jobs. So I agree with Commissioner Isnardi, and that's where I'm going to land today on a vote.
And as far as them hiring, because that's how they make money, until the economy recovers to a degree that they have the business to justify that, I don't know that that's 100% steadfast fact. They have to have that environment that's conducive to them making money. And if we put certain steps in motion to cause that to happen, or to help accelerate that, I don't know that anyone has individually, any government entity, the ability to restart everything just by unilateral action. But we have the ability to put people in a position that furthers that being more likely, that better enhances the chance of it occurring.
Business, so the business is able to do something, but if they don't have the business, they don't need to do something because they're not producing. So it's kind of the same
Well,
thinking. And then after that time period, if they're not doing better, they're going to lay them off anyways. So, it's just, we're just trying to get money into the economy. But I like doing it better through small businesses.
Commissioner Darty?
I was just going to say, I think you're beating a dead horse here.
Okay.
I appreciate your passion, and I really
That's
do.
fair.
And I respect your position on
Okay.
it. I just don't think you've even got another person up here that wants to move forward, at
Commissioner
least going
Smith?
this route.
Well, I've got several thoughts. I don't disagree with the three of you, I don't. But the other side of the coin is, how many $45 an hour employees are we talking about? That's an extreme case, I would guess.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say a little earlier, if I may. We have one here that was 41. One of the things we noticed is that first week of applications, what we decided to do, if it was a applicant earning over $25 an hour, we created a scale. So they wouldn't get the full 16 weeks, because we wanted to be fair with all the businesses. So just looking at the wages here, $15, $17, $31, $18.50, $15, $20, $12.50, $18.27. So to your point, that is an extreme case. And what we did was, again, anything over $25 an hour, they wouldn't get that full 16 weeks. at, you know, the $90,000 an hour, $90,000 a year job, because we wanted to make sure we spread it around to as many businesses as possible. And of course, when we opened it up, we didn't know how many applicants we would get. So now with the 160, that's, again, what the initial ask was. And I just wanted to say, too, we've had a lot of businesses that initially didn't qualify. So I won't say a lot, but we had some. So this is a community, so we've referred those businesses to the Brevard County grant as well. So this isn't about us and you guys, this is about our community. So irregardless of what your decisions are, we're grateful for, even if it's the 53 companies we were able to help, we're grateful for that as well.
Yes, we are. And also, just as a reminder, the application process and the criteria was for that small business to identify that employee that was really their priority to bring back on staff, that they had to dislocate either through a layoff or a furlough, and the wage associated with that individual is the prevailing wage that the business was already paying them. So we structured the program so that that priority employee to help bring that business back around was who they needed. And so that was how that one individual was identified.
Commissioner Tobias?
I'm going to try to play your role here.
Yeah. This
You know,
is
I
good.
appreciate what you do, and it's not negative that, you know, there's ancillary businesses that benefit from the work you do. Staffing, you know, companies, they turn around and invest, you know, pay taxes and turn around and invest in the community. And it's not like any of you are making beaucoup bucks. I'm concerned more about the folks that haven't had the opportunities to save. And yes, I understand $45 may be an outlier. You said it, so I went with it. And I'm not even concerned with the $2 million that, or the 1.5 that you know, Commissioner Lober. My goal is to get as many folks, you know, give them the opportunity to get employed, and I think there's a way to do that. I'm just looking at the average, the median salary in Brevard County, surprisingly, is only $27,360 according to Google, which gives me a rough hourly wage of just under $14. Commissioner Lober, the money could go further if we were to set a cap, and I see that's different than what you were saying. You were very excited that wealthy people, you're making $90,000, you're 3 times above the mean, where would be receiving those funds. So, Commissioner Lober, if it was just,
Sir.
I want to help those folks at the bottom of the pay scale, not the high. And I'm not arguing with your 1.5. If you were willing to set a cap of
25.
Well, I mean, then we're twice the median salary. I mean, I know it sounds terrible, but I don't think that we should be
20.
I mean, again, that's now
Don't make
you're.
me bid
Well,
against
most
myself
of the
a third
numbers
time.
that they were using were 17 and 15 and 18. So if you picked 18.
Well, then we're helping people above the average, right? We're helping the haves, not the have-nots.
But they're not the haves any longer. That's the concern.
But they had the opportunity. The problem is these people that go out there and have homes that they can't afford, and they go out and buy cars. Yeah, bad things happen, but they didn't save it all, as opposed to the people that didn't have the luxury like I did, whose parents paid for them to go to college and get a car when you're 16 years old. So I started that 100-yard dash 40 yards in. I want to help those folks that had to run the full distance. And the way we do that is to focus these monies on the people that haven't had the wonderful opportunities that people like me have had. And we do that by focusing in, I believe, on people that earn below the median. So I listen.
Meet me partway here.
What?
Meet me partway here.
Well, the median, again, is $13. $13.68 is the 27,000. If I'm wrong, the median it says the average, I'm on
Google?
Google, yeah, so if I'm off a few bucks, you know,
Well,
blame.
round it up a few bucks. I mean, you want to call it $17 an hour?
Well, that's not a few bucks, that's 50% above, you
Well,
see?
what number are you comfortable with?
How
I mean,
about-
really, that's the question.
How about, and I'm just making this number up, 20% above the median income? Just
Give
pull it-
me the math here. I don't have a calculator, and I'm
That's
not that good
five,
with it.
so you're above 30, whatever, 27 is 5, so like 33,000 bucks.
Which is what on an hourly basis?
I don't,
Yeah.
13.68 times 1.2 is $16.41.
1641?
Yes, or whatever 20% above the median income is if Google is incorrect.
Can we call it 1650 just to make it a clean number because I'm
If
obsessive
that-
compulsive?
No, 1649. Yeah.
Oh, come on, don't do that to me.
1650 sounds reasonable. That
Okay.
way, with the same amount of dollars, we could help more people and focus in on those
Okay,
people that
so
need it
let's-
the most.
All right, let's,
Let's ask a question here.
yes.
Are they even?
Does 1650 work for you? Because my ultimate question is, are you being overrun with people that are asking? I mean, do you have that many people out there that you can help at 1650 and below?
We do, but
Okay.
you're asking us, it's really the employers that submitted the applications. So I'm hearing the number. It's not with the existing applications, they submitted what they submitted. So it wasn't us, you know, when we opened up the program, we didn't put a wage amount.
Right.
We didn't, it just, again, that first week we saw we got some higher wages. So we said, well, you know what, to be fair, we needed to make sure that not, again, that $45 an hour job was paying, 4 months. So it's really the existing applications beyond the 53. It's what they put. So if it was a $20 an hour job, that's what it was. So then to go back and say, sorry, we can't help you, but we can help these other businesses that pay less, that's where we are. So as it stands, we would be able to help about a third of that 160. But it's not for us if that's a doable wage. It's the, when we opened it up, we didn't have a caveat as to what that wage could be.
Well, yeah, we didn't give you any parameters, so now
Right.
we're hearing
Right.
what that yielded, and we are deciding how we feel about that. It has nothing to do with you.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Okay, I know you guys are getting ready to settle somewhere, but I just got to say this and make you aware. So if you did the $16.50 an hour, then $660 go to the employee, $200 is going to go to the agency. 600 employee, 200 agency. If you do the $20 an hour, 800 to the employee, 240 to the agency. So just so you know, I mean, you're paying 30% off the top of, I mean, you're adding to that. So if you're going to do that $16.50, it's costing you $860 because you're having to pay that. Or you can just go with the businesses, say, hey, find these businesses that need employees. Instead of giving 10,000, we're going to give 15,000, and they can go hire employees, and you get rid of that. So I'm going to quit now.
But my only
I
concern
just-
is, can our staff do this? I
We've heard
mean,
not.
No, they don't have to set them up, but the businesses will come in, and, they're filling out the applications, and, we just give them more money and tell them to go hire more people, and tell the people these are the places that are hiring. I would even like to know which businesses we've been looking at. That would be very interesting to me. But I'm sorry, guys, I'm really struggling with the 30%
well, and I get
here.
it, I get it. I'd like to
And I'm not really usually stingy,
Mr.
but
Abate, what are your thoughts?
You gotta be kidding me.
Is this something
Hang on.
I
that you
think
can
I'm just
handle?
going to interrupt because I'm just getting ignored. And it's not Commissioner Lober's fault. It's just everybody just keeps talking. So again, you can count the votes. I'm not going to support this either because Commissioner Smith, no one has to do this program. And it's okay that you support it. And I don't even fault you for it because I believe that you believe in this. However, I'm where Commissioner Pritchett is. I think the percentage we're paying over is ridiculous. Yeah, you're a business who gets a free employee for 16 weeks. Don't think for a second they're not going to apply for it. They can show the COVID loss. They can show, yeah, I lost some employees. They just may be downsizing because profits are down, not because they had to close their doors. I'm more concerned about the businesses that are barely keeping their doors open or did have to let employees go. And we could easily make those monies available with the county. They don't have to be an employment agency. I'm just saying, so.
Well, that's my question.
And we can talk
that's
in
why I wanted to
circles,
ask.
and you guys can negotiate. If you're on board, I would just encourage you, Commissioner Lober and Commissioner Tabaya, to negotiate
terms that you can all vote for. I just don't want to waste anybody else's time on this. Because we've been talking about it for, maybe we need to have a CARES workshop.
Yeah, there you go.
Because we're way off. This is a zoning meeting, and we're knee-deep in CARES discussion.
Good point.
All right,
know.
let me jump in now that the lights are out on a couple things. First, Commissioner Pritchett, and I'm not going to beat this more than just a little bit now that it's dead. Just a little bit, just a little bit. I respect your thought that if we give the businesses money, that they're going to turn around and hire people. That's a hope. And one of the things I've learned in life is that hope is not a plan, certainly not a good plan. It may happen with some businesses. We guarantee that we're getting people reemployed if we go through this route. That's why I'm willing to pay a premium. You get that added value of ensuring to an absolute certainty that you have people that are reemployed.
So it's the same exact employee they're bringing back, it's not a new employee.
Most often, that's my understanding, but I don't believe we've limited it to
You
that.
wouldn't go through a temp agency if that was true, because they're bringing in people who need jobs and setting them up in new businesses, so I don't know if that's, yeah.
Well, here's my thought, and just to get back to it, the $750 that we allocated. We're already contractually obligated with CareerSource for them to do what they're doing with respect to that. Looking at a new allocation, whether we're talking 1.5 million or 2.5 million, whatever the number is, I'm fine with respect to that, setting parameters for them that are more stringent than what we did with the initial allocation that we gave them, so that with the additional money, they're confined and constrained to do what we tell them at this point are the requirements, presuming they're willing to take it. So if we say, okay, we'll fund you with an additional 1.5 or 2.5 million, but you cannot pay more than, the pay cannot exceed $16.50 an hour, I'm fine with that too, because anything we do to get people reemployed, sure, I don't like limiting it, but if that's something that's available for us to do, I'd rather help those folks out that we're able to help out by doing this than by doing nothing. I really think this is, to me, you're truly, this is the only way that I've seen that you truly incentivize work. You're getting people reemployed. You're not just giving them money to exist. And that, to me, is a huge reason that I approach CareerSource in the first place with this. I don't want to pay someone to breathe in air, make use of the oxygen, and exhale more carbon dioxide. That doesn't get the economy going. That basically allows them to exist and vegetate for a while, hoping that things are going to get better without actually causing them to get better. So to me, Commissioner Tobias, if you're willing to support 1.5, I'm happy to do that for the same sort of arrangement, capped at $16.50, not to exceed $16.50. If you're happy to do 2.5, I'm fine with that, wherever you're at. Commissioner Isnardi, I see a light, ma'am.
Yeah, after this program of the 16 weeks, are they required to keep the employee for a year or two or anything like that? Is there any guarantee of employment beyond the program?
No, at this
Okay.
point, there's no requirement.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we've even discussed it. I think in the meeting, and we're going back a little ways, hours and hours through multiple meetings, but I think everyone's acknowledged that some businesses will keep them, some businesses will not keep them. The percentage it's an unknowable number, but presumably if we're doing everything we can to give them an infusion of resources, you're giving them every possible opportunity. And in the meanwhile, you're also helping that employee be gainfully employed and contribute to the economy. So Commissioner Tobias, I think Commissioner Smith and I are at least close to being on par with this. Are you good with 2.5? It capped at $16.50. Are you good with 1.5? Where are you?
Mr. Chair.
Please, let's
I'm
make the
thinking-
sausage.
I'm thinking that 1.5 sounds, if that only accounted for a third, then it sounds like the 1.5 should more than extend the need. And if it's, 16 is a third of what the peak was making, you could help
You don't
just
need to
as many
justify
people.
it. Yeah. If you're good with 1.5, Commissioner Smith, I'd ask that you withdraw your earlier motion, sir. Okay, so I'll consider that motion withdrawn. Either Commissioner Smith or Commissioner Tobias, would one of you please make a motion to authorize an additional $1.5 million allocation to CareerSource Brevard to implement a substantially identical program, with the caveat being that it's capped at $16.50 an hour, up to and inclusive of $16.50 an hour. And if they want to use some portion of that for the folks that have already done their due diligence and been early at the table to offset some of the folks that have already applied, wonderful, to the extent that they qualify. Can I have a motion to do that?
I think Commissioner Tobias should do that.
Commissioner Tobias, would you, sir?
Motion to allocate 1.5 million to CareerSource.
As we just discussed?
As discussed, with a cap of $16.50 50 cents an hour.
Inclusive of.
Inclusive of, yes.
All right, I'm going to happily second it, and then, hopefully people can get home and get to sleep after this. All right, I don't think there's going to be any further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, passes 3-2 with Commissioners Smith,
Long
Tobias,
damn-
myself in the positive.
Long damn board report.
Oh, yeah, it is a long damn board report. And Commissioners Isnardi and Pritchett in the negative. Thank you guys for your patience. Can you all hang out just a few minutes? I was hoping to chat with you after the meeting, if you don't mind. I'm sorry to do it to you this late at night, but if you don't mind, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not going to add anything to the board report, otherwise the folks up here are going to murder me. Mr. Abate, what else do you have, sir?
No report.
Ms. Bentley?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I just want to mention one thing in North Brevard at 6755 South Washington Avenue tomorrow from 1 o'clock to 5 in a church parking lot. They're giving out tons of food. So if anybody needs some food, just show up and fill your car up.
Awesome. All right, Commissioner Tobias, sir?
No report.
Commissioner Smith, what do you have?
No report.
Commissioner Isnardi?
I would just say that if we're going to have these lengthy discussions, especially with CARES Act funding, we should probably do this in a workshop. Because I mean, this is just one little slice of the pie.
I second
And
that.
this money is so important, and I don't want to be doing that at the end of the meeting where everybody's getting a little irritated because we're going in circles.
Are you getting hangry?
Or I should say, I'm getting irritated because we're talking in circles. And it's nobody's fault. Everybody obviously cares about what we do with this money. I just think that we're making decisions on the fly, and I don't like doing that. I don't feel comfortable doing that. It's too important. So if we're going to have, like, maybe, I mean, the last thing I want is an extra meeting, because we have a lot of meetings, but this probably needs to be discussed in workshop on funding.
Do you all want to set something up? What do you think, Mr. Abate? Do you have an idea? And I'm sorry to kind of just spring this on you.
Commissioner, I only intended this to be a 5-minute discussion. I had no idea this was going to go
I'm sure
that
you
kind
did, Frank. I'm sure you did.
Yeah. So, but we'll be happy to set it up for a workshop.
Well, I would say if we get to a point where something like this comes up, then
Somebody
we make
just
a
yell
workshop out
workshop,
of
and then
it.
we'll just stop talking.
And if, I've said before, if someone needs me to call a special meeting, I'm not going to fight you on it. Just let me know and I'll call it. And if anyone, I know that unilaterally I can call it, otherwise it takes two of you. I'll just go ahead and let Mr. Abate know right now. If it pertains to CARES Act, just assume that I'm okay with it. I'll be the second vote on anyone's request to have a CARES Act special meeting. If it has anything to do with CARES Act, I'm fine with that. So just set it up for anyone that wants it. So essentially now,
That's fine.
unilaterally, you can do it. Just let Commissioner Abate. I did it a second time tonight.
And per the charter, the vice chair can also call.
Oh, there you go, and the vice chair. There you go. All right. I see Commissioner Smith standing up. 8:48 p.m. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.